You're listening to Pyro Media Network, setting radios ablaze since 2017.
Hey friends, hey family, hey y'all. It's Kim with Coffee with Kim, the podcast, and we are back for an exciting episode today. Yes, when I tell you this is an exciting episode, it is truly exciting. Um, First of all, I just want to make a few comments here. First of all, I just want to say, I am just so excited and so happy to be a Black woman in America. And it's not always easy being a Black woman in America. I feel like sometimes we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, and sometimes we're not appreciated, we're not acknowledged or noticed the way that we should be. But I'm still happy and glad to be a Black woman in America nonetheless. And not only am I excited about being a Black woman, but I'm just excited about being in relationship with Black women. I love my other sisters, don't get me wrong, but I love my sisters, my Black sisters. And so I'm kind of going in that direction because I wanted to kind of preempt what I wanted to talk about today, or who I wanted to talk to and just bring you into our conversation. So thank you for joining us today. Get your coffee, your tea, whatever you got in your cup, and enjoy this conversation. I met this lady at my job. Yeah, I met her at work, and we were working in the same office for a little while. At one point, I was her supervisor for a brief period of time, and I end up moving on to a different site or having a different region, but we just kept keeping in contact. You know how some people you just keep in contact with. And so I just noticed that, we just really kind of hit it off. I mean, I was like, I dig her. She is good people. She is cool people. She's easy to be around. She's easy to talk to, and then, because sometimes when you're at work, you always say, well, at work, you don't have friends. You can be friendly, but you don't have friends. But I felt like I saw our relationship moving in a different direction. Yeah, a different direction. And so we would start talking and just start sharing with one another, and just really encouraging one another and lifting each other up, and all those good things. And I really can say that I am really, really growing into a really good friendship with this lady. She's amazing. She has a special job where we work. We won't even talk about where we work, but she is a high level manager and an amazing manager. Her staff love her. They depend on her. She's very knowledgeable, very smart. But one of the things that also drew me to her was that she is a child of God. Now, she's a child of God. She has a doctorate. And I'm going to let her tell, a little bit about herself when she comes on. But I was just so impressed with her because even though she has a doctorate, she doesn't walk around with an air about herself. And I'm not saying all folks that do have doctorates do that, but I am saying that, some do. And so, but she's not like that. She is a down home sister. Learned some fun things about her, that she was a rapper back in the day, and just all kinds of great things. And so I'm going to bring her on to the podcast now, let her introduce herself, or tell us about herself. But I'm going to introduce Mrs. Cassandra Bolden, Dr. Cassandra Bolden. She's coming to the stage, you guys, and we're just going to chop it up. She has an amazing, interesting, very telling testimony of how, her life started one way, but it ended up another way. And she's an educated woman. And that doesn't always happen when we have rough beginnings. So I want to introduce to some and present to others none other than Dr. Cassandra Bolden. Come on to the stage.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. You're such a blessing. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, no, you are the blessing to me. I'm telling you, I have a couple friends. And it's not because I'm not a friendly person, but it's just you have like friends and then you have associates, acquaintances, people like that. But the more we talk, the more we, just share, I am really just really receiving you and feeling like you are really becoming a friend to me. And I just really appreciate that. We both had agreed early on, it's like, oh, you can be friendly at work, but don't have
Not
friends, but you
friends.
can be friendly.
Right.
Right. But it just seems like we keep moving in a different direction. And so I'm very grateful for that. I was sharing with our listeners that you have an amazing testimony. And the reason I brought you onto my podcast is because you and I were talking one day and you were just sharing some things. We were just having a conversation and you were just sharing some things. And I was just blown away. I was completely, I can't lie to you, Dr. B. I call her Dr. B. I can't lie to you. I was completely blown away by your testimony, such a testimony of resilience, and power and just how God's mercy and grace can be present in people's lives. And that even though they go through hard times, hard trials, they come up a certain way, it doesn't dictate that that's the way their life is going to be. And so I'm appreciative of that in you. So I just want you to just kind of give us a little background, where you come from, where you grew up, and all of that. And then we'll get into some questions so that you can share. And let me say this first. Let me say that I believe testimonies are to help people, they are to strengthen people, they are to give guidance to people, and most of all, they are to let people know that they are not alone, that they are not by themselves, and that they are not isolated in a silo. That yes, other people have experienced some of the same things that you have experienced in your life. And I felt like, let me bring Dr. B onto to my podcast because I know there are other women out there who are struggling in certain areas of their life and maybe struggling, because they want to do better, young women that want to do better, but maybe they just don't have a way or a direction to go. And so I feel like people like yourself who have struggled, had a lot of traumas in your life, but you nonetheless, not to say that it was easy, because sometimes people tend to think that they see our glory, but they don't know our story. And so I feel
Mhm.
like it's really important for people to know our story. So I just want you to go ahead and just kind of get into who you are, where you come from, and all of that good stuff.
Okay. I am an only child, and I am the daughter of a very, very young mother. My mother gave birth to me when she was 13, born and raised in Buffalo, New York. And it wasn't always easy, but the one thing that I've been saying to myself is that, God is a funny God, because I would have never imagined that coming from where I come from, going through what I went through, that I would be here today. Had I
Mm,
spoken to my 16-year-old self, I had no idea. I would have never
mm,
imagined it. I thought I'd be in prison. I thought I'd be in jail. I thought I'd be strung out. But I never thought I'd be here. So God is
wow.
a funny and an amazing God. But I'm here.
Yes, he is. Yes, yes. And so, you talked about your mom a little bit. Just share just a little bit about the environment that you grew up in, how your childhood was.
Yes. So I grew up in a family that was incredibly dysfunctional. I grew up I call it multi-generational unmothering, meaning I came
Mm.
from generations of non-mothers, meaning they didn't know how to mother because their mothers didn't mother them. And so when
Wow.
you come from a generation of mothers who don't know how to mother not only their children, but they really don't know how to mother their daughters, that
Mm.
that right there, it really set me on a path that when I say it set me on a path, I knew, which I never planned on having children, but I knew that if I ever did, I would mother them, that I would
Yeah.
love them, that I would nurture them, that I would take care of them, that I would tell them every day that I love them, because those are things that I didn't receive. Those are
Mm.
those are sentiments that my mother didn't receive, that my mother's mother didn't receive, and that my mother's mother's mother
Mm.
didn't receive. And so,
Wow.
um, coming from that type of multi-generational
Mm-hmm.
non-mothering and really
Mm-hmm.
breaking the cycle of violence, of sexual violence, of neglect, every type of trauma you can imagine, being able to break that cycle and be able to look back at and know that with my children they didn't go through the things that I went through. That, to me, that's success.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt that's success. Do you feel like, sometimes I think, and you mentioned something very interesting, about mothers not knowing how to mother, but especially not knowing how to mother our daughters.
Yes.
And I really feel like that's an important thing because the relationship between a mother and a daughter is so critical. Because honestly, like as moms to our daughters, we are their first example of everything. We're
Yes.
supposed to be the ones to share everything, to teach them everything, to prepare them for everything. And it really does cause a lot of issues and problems in the life of women, us young women or women, period, when our mothers don't have that ability to do that, when they don't
And we're
know
forced.
how to
Hmm.
share. Yeah, yeah.
And it's
And
gonna,
so
and
that,
it for. Hmm.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think it forces us to learn different ways to survive. Um,
Mm.
with my mother, she used her body and drugs. With my
Mhm.
grandmother, she used her body. She didn't use drugs, but she used a lot of manipulation and a lot of violence. And with her
Mhm.
mother, she used a lot of violence. And so with me, the young me, the teenage me, and even the me in my 20s, I didn't necessarily use that, but I was violent. I did avoid. I had a shell up. And so I think that when you don't have that mothering, you don't have that nurturing, you don't have that love, the only thing that you know how to do is survive. And when you're surviving, you
Yeah.
miss so much.
Mm.
You miss some of those really critical moments about connecting with people, about being able to trust people to allow them in your life
Yeah.
so that they can help you. And I think
Yes.
that unfortunately, just not having, I like what you said about mothers being really critical. That mothering relationship is really critical, and unfortunately, I can see the negative result of the lack of mothering, not only just with me, with my mother, but even some of my cousins and um, my great aunts, because if they weren't mothered, then they didn't know how to mother their children, and those children didn't know how to mother their children. And so it's just when
Wow.
you think about how something as simple as not mothering, the impact that it can have on generations. Because
Yes.
to this day, I have a lot of family, but we're not close because we weren't
Mm.
raised to be that way.
Mhm.
There's that lack of
Mhm.
trust. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of that, even with our relationships with our moms, especially, it could be with dads too, but especially with moms and daughters, We end up with a lot of attachment issues. We don't know how to attach to people. We'll attach in unhealthy ways. You talked about the violence, and you talked about, using your body and manipulation and all of that. That is something, that we will take on if we don't really know how to attach to people in a healthy way. We'll feel like we always are in a mode where we have to get over on people to survive, or then also the abandonment. you know I feel like there are some children who have abandonment issues who live right there in the home with their parents. And it could be mom and dad, but they could feel abandonment, if that parent or those parents are not present. I mean, like, showing up for them in their life. They're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like on their own, raising themselves, doing their own thing. I share with people quite often that not by choice or not because my parents were on drugs or anything like that, but I was a latchkey kid. I was a latchkey kid, and for those who don't know what that is you had that string around your neck with the door key on it.
With the key.
Right, with that door key on that string tucked down in your shirt, so
Yep.
nobody knew you had the key to your house. But if your parents were working or away or whatever the case may be, you had to be responsible to come home, go in the house, and whatever it is that you did once you got in there. But for me, I became a latchkey kid because my mother died when I was 11 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
my father, of course, was working and decided to keep us children together. And so
Yeah.
because of that, I had to grow up fast. I had to be
Yeah.
the mom almost to my two siblings, who were younger than
Mm-hmm.
me. And
Mm-hmm.
that for me, it caused some issues with attachment, because it wasn't that I was trying to manipulate people or I felt like people didn't want to be around me or I couldn't attach to others, but it for me. Sometimes I felt like, I'm waiting for that shoe to drop,
Yeah.
because we had so many people who said they would help us and be there for us, and they didn't. So I just kind of
Yeah.
learned how to pull back and just kind of go, okay, I got this, don't worry about it, with my dad. But
I can.
y-
Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
I was going to say I can definitely relate to what you're saying. I think not only do is there a tendency to develop attachment issues, but there's also, for me speaking, it's always that, oh, someone mentioned it at in one of our meetings, that imposter syndrome, not feeling like you're good enough.
Yes,
And when
yes.
I when I when I think about myself, I mean, I I was a child as when I was in my mother's womb because of the way that I was conceived. I was conceived through rape. My grandmother's husband at the time, he raped my mother to get back at my grandmother, and that is how I was
Mm,
conceived. And so my grandmother, knowing that my mother was pregnant with me at 5 months, she beat my mom in between her legs with the belt, trying to kill me. And so to
wow.
know, and she confirmed it when I was like 30 years old, but to know that even then I wasn't wanted when I was
Mm,
in the womb. And then when my mother gave birth to that man's baby at 13, my mother still had to go to school because she was too young. She couldn't drop out of school. So when my mother was in school, my I wasn't allowed in the house. I was in the hallway. It's Buffalo, New York. It's cold outside. I'm in the hallway on the stairs in a diaper, and I remember this crawling up the stairs,
wow.
asking to get in. She would leave me outside in a diaper. I think I had on a little onesie or something and a bottom. And I was left outside from the time my mother went to school until she got home. And so think about that. Think about a baby knowing that. And I remember that. And think about that abandonment. And then you think about all
Yeah,
the other things. Latchkey kid. I was a latchkey kid, not because my mother was working. My mother was
right.
17. She was
Mm,
partying. She was doing drugs. So I was a
mhm.
latchkey kid. And, I'm I'm in the house. I'm in the hallway. I'm not in the house. So I'm in the hallway until 10 o'clock at night until she get home from the party. And so
Wow.
there's that abandonment and so many other examples of abandonment. But it not only leads to abandonment, but it leads to just not feeling like you're good enough to be accepted. Because if you can't be accepted in your own family, if
Mhm.
you can't be accepted by the people who are supposed to love
Yeah.
you, why would you think that you're going to be able to be accepted by people who don't know
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that it was those things? And it's funny because when you think about things like that, you tend to think like, okay, situations like that can either fuel you to make you go harder, to do better, to figure it out and to grow and develop and become a doctorate, or those things can be the thing to kind of like just bury you, and then you start repeating those same things that were in your family. You start repeating,
Mm-hmm.
the abandonment. You start repeating the attachment issues, and then, like you said, the multi-generational, unmothering that took place. That's deep. When you said that, I was like, whoa, that's a what do you call it when you're working on your doctorate? That's your thesis right
Dissertation.
there.
A thesis,
I
a
mean,
thesis statement.
honestly, yeah. That is something that really could be that's something that really could be looked at with a lot of different people and a lot of different situations for a lot of different reasons. But that's something to know that a young child, a baby, is left outside in the cold. And I know it gets cold in you said Buffalo, New
Yes.
York,
Hmm.
freezing. So just the fact that you survived that, you know, God had to
But
have
you know
some
why?
plan for your life.
Because I knew I didn't belong there, Kim. I didn't
Wow.
belong there. I promise you, I thought I was adopted. I was like, I cannot be related to these people. It's like I always knew
Wow.
I didn't belong there. I mean, bad enough, the man, my grandmother's husband, who raped my
Yeah.
mother, he was half
Yeah.
white, and so
Mm.
it was bad enough that I came up with these light eyes and sandy brown hair, and my whole family's dark, and they call me hunky because I'm by the half white man. But
Wow.
I just didn't feel like I belong. Like I didn't belong. I remember living with my grandmother, and this is after she got me out of foster care. And at that time, my grandmother, there was always something very dark about her. I knew that even as a really young child. But I remember being 8 years old, and she was what I now know as tarot cards, but I didn't know what they were. And she was
Wow.
doing the little cards. She's doing the little cards, and she's like, "Do you want to play with me?" I was like, "No,
You
I
knew.
don't." I knew. I always knew I
Wow.
didn't belong there. I always knew that I didn't belong there. I was always the strong one that she was trying to break. When my
Mm.
mother, at the time, she would come visit me every other Friday because I was still in the foster care system. My grandmother was just getting
Mm.
money for fostering me, as ironic as that
Mm-hmm.
sounds. And every other Friday, that Friday would come around. It was like from 4 to 6, my mother could visit me. And at 3 o'clock, my grandmother would call all her old friends from the neighborhood, all these old women, and they would all be sitting around the table while my mother is visiting me, and my grandmother would be calling my mother all types of bees and whores, and my mother would be crying.
Mm.
And I'm 8 years old, and I'd be standing in between her legs, like, shut up, talking about my mama, yo, bitch, just shut up, talking. Like, I've always been a protector,
Wow.
always
Yeah.
been that protector, always until the day my mother died. I always was that
Really?
protector to her,
Yeah.
and always was that also that one that my grandmother and all her religions that she tried Rosicrucian, she tried tarot, she tried all that witchcraft stuff, all that stuff, and she could never break me. And I know it's because God had His hand on my life. I know that now. I know that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, the fact that you're here, in your right mind, you know,
Yes,
and all
Lord.
of that. Yeah, I mean, people have like tripped out for less,
Yes.
and so it's just it's an amazing thing. And I always feel like uh there is a purpose, there is a reason, there is, reasoning and purpose behind the trauma and all the things that we go through. I feel like God doesn't allow us to survive all of that and not be able to use it for the good of sometimes not our own selves, but sometimes for
Hmm.
others. And so that was why it was
Yes.
so important for me to have you on my podcast, because I believe in helping and empowering women and uplifting women and just people in general. That's just something I do. It's something I've done for years and years and years, even as a kid, just talking to people and helping people. That's just always been my mission, my personal goal. But when we come back, we're going to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, I have a few more questions. I want to talk to you about, some coping mechanisms that maybe you had when you were growing up. We're going to go to a commercial.
Hmm.
Do you have a business, brand, or even a creative idea? Power Media Network can help you design a strategy to make your brand impactful. Visit www.powermedianetwork.com today to schedule a free consultation. Power Media Network, next level media.
Okay, so we're back. We are back here with a Coffee with Kim, the podcast, and my special guest today is Dr. Cassandra Bolden, an amazing woman who's sharing her testimony with us today of how she just triumphed over what the devil thought he was going to mean for good. God used it and flipped it, and now she's doing amazing things. I wanted to ask you, because we all have our own way of coping, and sometimes the way people cope is not necessarily a healthy way of coping, but it's their way of coping nonetheless. How do you think, or what were some ways or some things that you did as a young person to cope, during or while you were going through all these difficult experiences that you were going through?
I think what I try to do, especially in my teenage years, is I just, I think I tried to have a normal life as much as I could in my own way. Um, I would try to find people or friends that I would hang around so that I wouldn't have to um, be at home or, be around um, the negativity that I was constantly around. So I would hang with friends. But I have to be honest with you, during that time in my life, I wasn't coping in a healthy way. I was I was not being a child of God back then. I was angry. I was bitter and bitter about my circumstances, bitter about how my mother was, bitter about how my family was, bitter about everything. And I didn't necessarily have any healthy coping skills. I think the only thing that sustained me was that I was academically smart. And I wasn't like
Mm,
academically smart on purpose. I was just smart. I just happened to be a smart kid in the hood. But it wasn't like I was like,
wow.
"Ooh, someday I'm going to grow up and get my PhD." No, I was like, if I can have 3 or 4 babies, I can sell half food stamps and I can do this. And that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
in my head. I
Yeah.
had no intentions on being anything. I was just trying to figure out how to survive and 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 at least not wind up like my mother. At
Wow.
least not wind up
So
like
you
my
were just
mother. But
naturally smart. You were naturally smart, just naturally
always,
academically smart.
I
But you
was
were also
always. I used to be
street
able to.
smart too, though, right?
Yes, I was street smart. I used to be able to go to school and just take the test. Like I wouldn't even have to study. I would just be done with the test in 5 or 10 minutes. And I remember I would do that, and everybody would be like, "Damn, she's done." And or I'm supposed to be taking a test or be in a study hall, and I'm shooting craps and CeeLo and everything with the deals and taking their money. I was that girl. That was me,
Wow.
because
Wow.
that's how I learned. That's how I learned how to survive. And I because there was no other way. I didn't learn where I grew up. No one even really had a car. Everybody was on
Mm,
welfare. Nobody was really
mm,
working. So
mm.
I was just a product of my environment. I didn't know any other way. That's how I knew how to survive. Yes, I was smart, but even though I was smart, I wasn't like, "Ooh, I want to go to college today." Not at all. I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna turn 18. Now what?" Had no
Mhm,
plans.
mhm.
But as I got
Wow.
older, when I went to college and I saw something different, that's what changed. That's when I started having
So
goals because there
what
was
caused
something
you to go to
different.
college? What was it that caused you to go to college?
Honestly, in my high school, the vice principal, he was like, "Oh, I've been looking at your grades. You're really, really smart. Have you ever thought about going to college?" And I was like, "College is for white people and rich people. I'm not white and I'm not rich. So no." And so I
Mm.
was so unmotivated. He did the applications for me. I just signed them. And I remember it was an application to Wilberforce, uh, uh, Temple, and I forgot the other school. And I had no motivation. So apparently, I remember I got accepted, and I was due to go to leave for college. I want to in like a couple of weeks or something like that. And I
Mhm.
want to say a week before I went to college, I was fighting a dude on the street, and he knocked me out. That's who I was. I was like,
Wow.
he's 5'6". I can take him. I can take him. I used to fight dudes. That was that. I was her. I was like, I
Wow.
can take
And you
him.
talked about being angry, so I'm sure a lot of the
Very, very
fighting and all.
angry. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Mhm.
that's who I and
Mhm.
that's who I was. And but I remember when I went there, and I went to college, and I went to a black college, and I remember going there, and there were all these black young people, but they were not only smart, but their parents came from two-parent homes and things I've never even imagined. And so once again, I could have succeeded, but I didn't fit in. I felt out of place because remember,
Mhm.
I'm a product of my environment. So
Right. Right.
I'm in college. I'm smoking things I shouldn't be smoking, drinking things I shouldn't be
Mhm.
drinking, partying,
Mhm.
trying to fight the girls that I shouldn't be trying to fight, still trying to do all that same
Mhm.
stuff. And I flunked out.
Really?
I flunked out. I got all F's and a D. My GPA was a point 0.8 or something like that.
Oh, a
But
point eight.
a
Wow.
point 0.8. So I remember I went home because I'm stupid, right? So, but in my mind, I think I'm smart. But I went home, and I remember I was like, I got a year of college. I can get any job I want. I didn't know any better. And I remember when
Mm.
I got home, and my uncle was about 5 years older than me. And I remember I told him what happened. He was like, and this is what did it for me. He was like, we knew you was going to F up. That was it.
Wow.
I had to prove him wrong.
So
And
so
so
that was your fuel.
that was my cue because remember that my whole family, they were just
Yeah.
waiting on me to mess up like they did. They were just
Yeah.
waiting on
Yeah.
me. And so I remember when he said that, going home because I've lived with my mom, and I remember telling myself, Cassandra, if you want to get back to college, you're going to have to go be around that environment. So what I did is,
Mm.
and mind you, because I didn't do my college work study, I owe $4,000 too. And this is in
Wow.
1990, so I owe $4,000. I had no money, and I needed to stay clear because if I would have stayed in the hood, because I'm a fighter, I was like, I'm gonna wind up in
Yeah.
jail. I knew I was gonna wind up in jail, and so what I did is,
Yeah.
I I I went to the neighborhood of the University of Buffalo. I subletted a room so that I could be around college students. So I wasn't in college, but I knew if I was in that environment, that would keep me focused. I got a job at the McDonald's near there, so I'm not in the hood. And because I needed to have some money, I went into the welfare office in downtown Buffalo, and I got on welfare. And I remember it was like 156 a month. I gave my mother the food stamps because this is when food stamps still paper. And I would cash
Wow.
the welfare checks and send it towards my back balance. And I worked at the McDonald's like 70 hours a week. And I pay my little rent and I pay my balance. I did that for a year. And so now it was time for me to try to get back in school. And so I wrote a letter to get back in school. And I remember they were just like, the GPA is a point 0.8. You can't even qualify for financial aid. My GPA was too low to qualify for financial aid, girl. That's how low my GPA
Wow.
was. And so I remember they said that they had to, I guess, read about it or whatever. And so I finally got the letter
Mhm.
that said I was going to be accepted on academic probation to have one semester to pull
Mhm.
my GPA up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you got to be to school in 2 days. So I don't give them all my money. I ain't got no money. My mama ain't got no money. And I have never met anybody with luggage. So but it's 1990. I have a little jewelry that said, my earrings that said Sandra on it. I have a little jewelry that says Sandra on it. I pawned my little jewelry for a
Wow.
one way Greyhound bus ticket. Went to my mama house, got 2 garbage bags, put my clothes in some garbage bags. It was that time of the month. I got a roll of toilet paper. I ain't had no food. I got a roll of Ritz crackers, and I got on that Greyhound bus, and I went to Dayton, Ohio, and I went to school. I got my GPA up, was on the dean's list, and I didn't look back.
You just made me sit back in my chair. I mean, honestly, people need to hear that you can make it. You can make it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no matter how humble your beginnings are and or how traumatic they are, if
Mm-hmm.
you are have a determination in your mind. And I know you said the fact that your family said we knew you would go and f up, or
Yep.
that was your fuel. That
Mm-hmm.
was the thing that motivated you and pushed you because you were like,
Yep.
nah, y'all not gonna determine what I will or will not do. You're
Yes.
not gonna call me out like that. And so that just shows that you had all this tenacity. But the fact that I even want to go back just a bit, the fact that you were a little baby on a cold porch, drinking from a bottle, waiting all day for your mom, and you just kept going. That shows right there was something inside of you that just would not die. And there are
Say
many
that. Say that
others.
again. Say that again. Say that
Something,
again. Would not
something
die.
in you
Say that
just
again.
would not die.
My grandmother, when she was 30 years old, I took my grandmother out to dinner at the Anchor Bar in
Mm.
Buffalo, because Buffalo's known for buffalo wings. If you know anything about Buffalo, visit the Anchor Bar, best wings. So I'm
Okay.
sitting there with her, and she starts telling me this story. Yeah, girl. Oh, actually, I graduated with a doctorate at 31, 32. So I must have been like 32 or something like that. And she's like, yeah, I tell you, when your mama was pregnant with you, I tried to beat you out of her, but you wouldn't die.
Wow.
And look at you now.
Wow.
And then when she said that to me, I looked at her like,
Did you really mean say that? Yeah.
she said it and she meant it. And I just, she's my grandmother. No matter what she did to me, I always was
Wow.
going to have that deference for her and show her that
Mhm.
respect because I know my grandmother, not making any excuses, not making any excuses for her behavior and how she was as a mother. But she shared with me, my grandmother is a very dark skinned, beautiful, black woman. Beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful. But her mother had a problem with my grandmother's color. And so
Mhm.
my grandmother was one of 3 sisters. And she was the darkest of the 3. She was the oldest and the darkest. And my grandmother told me that her mother used to call her black bees and things like that. And you look like your daddy, your black bee, blah, 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 blah. And so my grandmother told me when she was 8 or 9 years old, she came home from school and she opened up the apartment door because they lived in like a flat, it was like a couple of rooms. And
Yeah.
her mother had taken everything and her 2 sisters with the good hair. And the only thing she left my
Wow.
grandmother with was a blanket, a loaf of bread, and some peanut butter.
Wow. Wow.
And
So when your grandmother
my,
told you that story, did it help you understand her a little bit better?
oh yes, oh
Mm-hmm.
yes, it totally helped me to understand her. It did, and it helped me to understand her issues with color. It helped me to understand her issues with my color and her issues with my daughter's color. It helped me to
Mm-hmm.
understand that because of the way that she was treated because of her color,
Yes.
she was
Yes.
I was always going to be that trigger for obviously for a number of reasons, but I was always going
Sure.
to be that trigger because of my color,
Yeah.
because so she's my grandmother slash stepmother slash because all
Mm.
of those different things that happened. But
Right.
it definitely helped me to understand her because by the time she told me that story, I was a woman, so I was able to understand her as a woman
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
how and the power of color in our community and how it can
Oh
cause
my
us to
God.
treat each other, treat our
Yes.
children,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
you
Treat our
know.
children, our family members, our neighbors. I mean, our
Yes,
friends. That colorism is something. It runs deep.
it's
It runs deep in our generations past,
mhm
you know,
mhm
and I mean, you think about the slaves. The slaves were treated
mhm
differently based on color. Some slaves were able to work inside the house because of their color, opposed to slaves who worked in the field. You know, so I mean, even with a little bit of go ahead, a little bit of my background with
mhm
colorism. There's a lot of colorism that has a lot to do with how some of the family get along or didn't get along.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Do you know? I think I told you because of me being the daughter of my grandmother's half white husband. My entire family,
Mhm.
everyone called me Hunky, and I thought that was my name,
Wow. Wow.
but I didn't understand why they called me Hunky. I didn't understand it. Like Kim, I didn't know about my birth or my conception, I guess you could say. I didn't know how I was
Yeah.
conceived until I think I learned like 6 years ago. I didn't know. And
Really?
I know God did. I know God did that for a reason because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I know I wouldn't have been able to. I
Really?
remember
So
my
just six
mother.
years ago.
I found about it about 2019, so about 5 years ago. I remember my mother telling me, and like I said, my mother was young, so she definitely wasn't the best mother. She didn't know how. So I remember her telling me as a little girl, I was raped. And so hearing this from the age of 5 all the way up until God knows, I was raped, saying. So I'm already feeling this sense of guilt because, I was conceived out of pain,
Mm-hmm.
but I just didn't, I never knew who it was. And then one day, my cousin, he called me and he was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm going to write a book." I was like, "Oh, good, congratulations." He was like, "Yeah, so there's going to be some things there that, might be a little disturbing to you, but, and he was like, "Your mom's been through so much." I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know she's been through a lot." He was like, "No, she's really been through so much." I was like, "Yeah, I know she's been through a lot." And he was like, "No, Cassandra, your mother, she's been through a lot." I was like, "Okay, what?" And so he told me that um, he's probably about 3 or 4 years older than me. He told me that his mother was married to my uncle. He said his mother used to drop him off and go, at my grandmother's house and go to work. And I guess when she dropped him off, my grandmother would also go to work, and it would be my mom, who at the time, if I was a baby, 1 years old. He said I could barely walk. I could walk a little bit. So my mother might have been maybe 14, 15. And he said one day he was at home with granddad at granddad's house, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm asleep in the bed. And he said he happened to maybe I think he said he woke up from a nap and he walked around looking for everyone, and he walked into the room where I was sleeping in bed, and he saw um, my grandmother's husband on top of my mother, having sex with her, holding her mouth
Wow.
with his hand closed, and I was asleep. And he said he was about 6. And he went, when
Wow.
his mother picked him up, he told his mother about it, and she was just like, well, don't say anything. And this has been
Wow.
going on. And so sad what's happening to Gwenda. The whole family knew.
Gosh.
They
And
knew
that's the
nobody
thing
protected my
in our
mom.
family. That's the thing about, some of our
They
families is we
knew.
have these secrets and
Yes,
and we tell these children or children were told, don't you tell
they all
anybody,
knew.
keep it to
Yes,
yourself,
yes,
and
they
that's
all
why
knew.
there was so much trauma
Yes,
in
they
our
all knew.
upbringing, in our women, because we've been told to be quiet, don't say anything, don't
Yes,
don't tell anybody. But that's a different we're sharing a different message with our girls. I know I was
yes,
sharing a different
yes.
message with my girls. It was like, you tell me everything and I don't care who it is.
That's
It
exactly
could be
what I said.
somebody related to me.
Yeah, I would tell my girls, if I don't care if somebody says, if you tell your mom I'm gonna kill her, can't nobody kill me. So tell me.
No, you
I'm like,
tell
just
me.
tell me.
I know that's right. I know
Tell
that's
me
right. Let me
everything.
ask you
But
this. Let me
hmm
ask you this because I know that, even though I know you had all this tenacity, you had this will to live, this will to do better, were there any specific people in your life, or in the community that helped you kind of, catapult yourself forward, that helped you during all of this time of challenge and trauma?
yes. My godmother Clarissa Anderson, she just turned 83. She is a
Oh.
praying woman, and I know that God sent her into my life when I was 10 because God knew that my mother didn't know how to be a mother. I know that's why He
Mm.
sent her into my life. I know it. She's the reason that I graduated from high school because I was homeless.
Mm.
I met her when I was 10. I met her
Mm.
because me and her daughter got into a fist fight because I called her daughter bald headed and I was like, your hair's so short, you can roll with rice. And she punched me in my face and we've been best friends ever since.
Oh wow.
I was like, your hair is so short, you can roll with rice. And she punched me in my mouth. And we've been best friends ever since. And so
Wow.
her mother knew that my mother, had some issues and everything else. So we just need to stay close to her daughters, continue to stay close to her. And so now I'm in my teenage years. And I remember um, when my mother got me out of foster care, she started dating this guy. He happened to be getting high on crack, but he was also a pervert. And, there were times when he would like physically fight me, which is another reason why how I learned how to fight men because I'm fighting a grown man when I'm
Okay.
13, 14. So,
Wow.
and he would say things like I would hear him in my mother's bedroom saying, "I bet you Sandra's is tight," and blah 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 blah. And my mother would start
Mm.
crying and stop saying that, Calvin. And so I remember one night I had just came home. I met this cute guy in the projects. I live right next to the projects. I had met this cute guy. He walked me home, and I was like, "Oh!" And I remember I walked upstairs to my room, and um, he was once again saying that stuff again. I bet you
Yeah.
Sandra's is tight and blah blah blah. My mother started crying again, and I always kept this steel pipe next to my bed. Always kept it
Mm.
next to my bed, always, because I just never knew when this man was coming. And so he kept
Mm.
talking, he kept saying it, that those nasty, horrible things again, and my mom's in her room crying, and I remember I walked in the room with the pipe, and I was like, "You better stop saying that." And he was like, "What you gonna do? You look." And I hit him in the head with the pipe, and I remember thinking to myself, it felt like you hit a baseball. That's what it felt like, as horrible as it is. But I remember thinking that when I hit
Oh.
him, and I hit him, and I ran down the stairs and ran out. And once again, my mother called the police because she's always called the police on me whenever he would fight me. But this time, in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to not only protect her, but anyway, that's in my mind. That's what I thought. So, needless to say,
Yeah.
my mother once again told me, if I'm not willing to be a part of the family, then I have to go. I could come back. So now I'm homeless again, and I was sleeping on my
Mm.
best friend's floor. I'm still going to school though.
Mm.
I'm still going to
Wow.
school. I always had a little job. I always had a little job, so I'm still going to
Yeah.
school. I'm still going to work. But I'm still fighting because I'm fighting at Burger King. I'm beating girls up. I just had a bad attitude at the time. And so I remember I'm telling you, the customers would be watching me just beat somebody up with fries. I didn't care. I was about that life back then. And
Okay.
so I really was, I was about that life. And so I remember I was coming home from school or somewhere, and I saw my god sister, the one that I said was bald headed with the race, and I saw
Yeah.
her on a bus, and she was like, "What you doing, Sam?" I was like, "I'm gonna tell you, but you better not tell your mother." I was like, "I've been sleeping on Rachel's
Mm.
floor." So
Mm.
I'm sleeping on Rachel's floor one day. Guess who knocks on the door? My godmother, saying, "Get on down here." You come. She made me move with her. I moved with her. I'm telling you, she never treated me any different. I had to be home by
Wow.
8. I could only go to school and go to work. I couldn't run the streets. I had to go to church. All that stuff. That's how I got through my senior year. That's how I graduated.
Okay. Wow.
That's how I
That's an
graduated.
amazing story. And just to think that
That's
God had that woman
yes.
in your life and she was a big part of who you are today, you know?
She did
I
not
mean,
let me
even
run the
after
streets. She wouldn't
you
let
had
me.
that, yeah, but you had that instinct to live and to survive. But, it's
hmm
amazing when you have these people that just come alongside us, they don't have no skin in the game. There's nothing out there for them. They just want to do good by us. And that's an
hmm
amazing story about your godmother. I want to bring this, I hate that it's so many facets, so many layers, and I'm going to bring you back to the show. But I really want you to I want us to end here because we have probably about a good 5 minutes left. But I want you to just I want to end here by you sharing what advice, because I know there are some women, young women, there are people out there who deal with their past or have had traumatic issues going on in their lives when they were kids coming up and they didn't quite fare well. And sometimes it's because we haven't forgiven ourselves, we haven't forgiven that
hmm
child, that little person, because sometimes we blame ourselves for the very traumatic things that happened to us. But what would
hmm
you say? What advice would you give to the younger Cassandra? What advice would you give her today, knowing everything that you know now? What would you say to
That's a
her,
good
and what would you
question.
say to other young women?
Oh, that's a really good question. Gosh, what would I say to the young Cassandra today? I would tell her no matter what it looks like, no matter who or what happens to you, you can overcome it. Sometimes that overcoming is going to be painful. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's such a long process, but there is a reason behind the pain. There's purpose behind the pain, but there's also glory. And sometimes it's not
Mm,
just always the glory for us; it's the glory for God, and God does get the glory out of it, even if it's just
yes.
by you overcoming so that you can help someone else. A lot of
Yes.
times I used to ask God, why me? Why is this happening to me? And I'm just now
Mm,
at almost 54 starting to understand my why. That's how long it took.
mhm. Yes, there. That's a question I've been asking people. What is your why? What this stuff that we go through, this life that we experience, it just cannot be all for naught. There's got to be a reason
hmm
behind it. There's a reason why you came through what you came through. There's a reason we met. A reason that our
Yes,
relationship went from a very professional one, to we're moving into a friendship and
yes.
that's amazing for me. Let me ask this one last thing. How do you envision, or what is the next chapter for your life? Where do you see
Oh,
Cassandra in the next few years? What does that look like for you?
I think the next chapter is 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 no more shame,
Yeah.
and I think helping others, especially women. There's no more shame,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why this is coming to my spirit
Mm-hmm.
right now. I just I see myself really helping women move from shame to
Yes.
whatever that next step is, whatever that out is for them, but moving on from shame. And I don't know
Yes.
what that looks
No,
like. I don't know
I
what,
agree. I
no more
agree.
shame.
I agree. No more shame. And that's what keeps us, holds us back is that shame. And the thing about it is we are ashamed of things that we had no control over. All that
Exactly.
stuff that happened to you from the time you were conceived up until the time you ran from that home, living with your mom and her boyfriend. You had no control over any of that, you know but we carry, for some reason, in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits,
Hmm.
if we're not careful, we will carry that shame. And if we're not careful, we will deposit that shame into the next
Into our,
generation.
yes, yes, yes.
We
It's
will
like being
deposit
haunted.
that into the next. So, it's amazing that we have to be so vigilant, not just for ourselves so that we can keep moving, but we have to be vigilant so that our generations after us, our daughters and our daughters' daughters, they can see us resilient, being able to bounce back and to move forward, into a better place in our lives. Dr. B, thank you. Thank
Oh, thank
you.
you for having me.
Thank you enough. This has been really rich. I'm going to definitely have you back. We may talk about some different stuff, but I think maybe when you come back, we'll talk about how we can help women, move past shame, and
Yes,
all the things that they've experienced in their life. We can put something together where we can share that information with women so they can know that they don't have to live in the shame of their past. They don't have to live in the shame of what others did to them, you know,
yes.
and they can be free of that, and they can be
Hmm.
free to be a better themselves, a better you. So thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. And
Oh, I love you
I'm
too.
I'm excited about not only where you're going personally, where I'm going personally, but I'm excited about where our relationship is going. I really am. I'm real picky about my
So nice.
friends.
Me too.
So,
Seriously, let me say something. You are the first Facebook friend at work because usually I don't do Facebook with friends that I
me
currently work with. You're
either.
the first
Me
one.
either. Yes, you too.
You're the
I'm
first
telling
one.
you, I'm
I was like, this is
that.
something I don't do. I don't do
Me
this. Usually
too.
I'll be your Facebook friend after we don't work together no more. But you're the first one. So I was like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's a
think
trust
too
that we
much.
have for each other. Yes.
Yes.
So thank you again. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing, being so transparent and open, with our audience today. And I'm just looking forward to the future. So again, I say thank you, and you
Thank you
take
for having
care
me.
and you stay safe.
This episode is brought to you by Pyro Media Network, produced by Pyro Media Productions, setting brands ablaze since 2017. Thank you for listening.